Well, this is hopefully going to be a fairly quick video. I've made a bit of progress scraping in the alignment on the cross slide, in so much as I've done the first 1, 2, 3 faces. I've still got to do the top half of it and the tool, and I'll take you through that. That'll be in this week's update. I have to apologise for not getting a video out sooner. I've had a number of family crises which are ongoing and I'm working through. So as a result of that, I've not even had a chance to compile all the entries for the straight edge competition. The straight edge is here, it's in its box, it's done. I've got some ferrules to make for the handles for the runner-up prizes. But the good news is anybody out there that wants to have another entry, I'm looking at another week before I can get everything done. So you've got a week to get your entries in. If you scroll back through the last few video comments, you'll find the answers in there. So yeah, so we'll show you the scraping of the top slide and its mating faces. Cheers. For those that perhaps have missed a few of the earlier videos, this is the straight edge box which is up for prize, and these will be the handles which I've got to fit ferrules to. And the straight edge is in there, it's all fully scraped up, good user, it's 12-inch wide. The straight edges are made by Clive Lamb, and I'll put a contact detail in the comments below. He's got a few in stock and he's compiling orders for his next casting batch. Definitely worthwhile having a go at the competition, because I think there's less than 40 entrants, so for $5 you get a chance of winning what, 150 quid's worth of casting, and he's already scraped to go, so that's got to be worth another tenner surely. So I'm just starting to have a look at the top face of the cross slide proper. We know that the bottom face is flat and true all over, and when I scraped the bottom in, I was checking depths here all the way around and wanted it within 1 thou. What I'm finding is that there's a raised section in the middle here and here of around about 2 thou. So the corners, this one, this is as it appears on the lathe, so the chuck would be there. So this one's -2 thou, that's 0, that's 0. So they're the two high spots, basically down through the middle, and you could just about see the witness line of where the compound slide was clamped, which is there. So the two locking screws are there, and they've basically pulled up. I don't know how many years it was left like that, but that's what we've got. So lowest point is there, -2 here, and that's what you'd expect, because that's the side that was worn most on the underside, and I've scraped that plane in. So now what I've got to do is skim it off, not take any off this point, very little down here, sort of 1/2 thou, and then the most of the material is coming off this section here, and then we're down to 1 thou, another 2 thou here, 1/2 thou, sorry, 2.5 thou, and that one will be the highest spot, which is the tailstock side of the front edge. So if that's -2, that's plus 0.5, so that's 2.5 thou got to come off there to get us a flat plane, co-planar with the bottom bit. All I've done at the moment is just took off the nicks and dinks and tried to get a rough idea of what's going on. Alright, so that's the setup. Bring you back when you've made progress. So rather than put in another load of me scraping, I'll just tell you the way I'm approaching it. I'm mapping it out with a DTI. Starting at there has been my lowest point. It's somewhere along that edge. So 0, then I go up 1/2 thou, down, back to 0, up 1/2 thou, back to 0, up 1/2 thou, up 1/2 thou, 0, 0. And then this area now, I've got 1 thou higher here than I am there, 1.5 thou, thou. So within that black line, I'm now going to give that a pass and then go back over it. And then what I'll do is I'll do the pass to then take all of it down, and that should take me within 1/2 thou of that corner over the whole area then. Those are the plan. So I've scraped that blocked in area that way. Now I've rotated the part, and I'm actually going to scrape the same just the ergonomics are easier for me to do it like that now, but it's crossing the cuts. I got asked on an earlier video why I scraped over an area that I just scraped the blue off, and the simple answer of it is I'm gauging how much I take off with a pass. If I believe that the area that I'm going to be scraping is, let's say, 3/4 of a thou high, I'm quite happy to take 2 passes and know that I've left material on for the next pass. If you hack at it with a view to making deep cuts all the time, it's really hard, I find, with a hand scraper to actually gauge how much you're taking off each pass, because it will vary as you get more tired across the pass. I tend to scrape to get the alignment first, and would rather take a lot of passes but know that what I'm generating is a good consistent plane with no depth to it. Then I can texture it and put whatever depth I want into it. It's a different approach to a lot that are out there, but it works for me. As I say, it takes the strain out, but gives me a more consistent surface. I waffle on. So about a dozen cycles now. I'm not hitting it hard because it's less than half a thou over it, and you can see now it's starting to come in around. I think that's actually now the lowest point. That's a couple of tenths below that one. Anyway, we're just going for coverage now. I can't find enough of a variation left to right to warrant getting upset about the geometry. So as I'm starting to develop a plane over the top face, I'm just continually checking that I've not got variation left to right, front to back, and it's within half a thou, maybe a couple of tenths. It's certainly well within acceptable tolerances. So I'm just going to carry on. It's probably going to want 2 or 3 more passes. This corner's not come in yet, nor is that corner, but in terms of the bits that are in contact with the underside of the mating element, the corners aren't. So yeah, just carry on and rinse and repeat. So the last time I scraped it, or the last cycle, I did it that way. So I'll turn it round, cross my cuts, and do it that way. So that's the after that scrape. So this corner's blank, not touching, and neither is that corner. When I stick the compound slide base unit on there, it's clear there, it doesn't touch anywhere. So I'm not too fussed about them being out of it. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to give it a complete scrape one way and then another one the other way, and then go for contact. I'm happy that it's flat now and it's in the right plane, so it's just a case of making it look pretty and give it a bit more bearing contact for a static face. So that's the print after the first finishing pass. As I say, we're not that bothered about contacting the corners for the simple reason there's nothing actually comes into contact with it. We've got a flat plane, so we'll just go over it now, give it another pass, and then we'll hit some of the highest points like that section there. Look better than it did anyway. Well, I've gone back a couple of steps. I'd got half a thou variation left to right after another close examination. So I've put on the 10th indicator and step scraped it back, and I've now got 0 and 0. I've got a raised section in the middle here, and it's a little bit higher down this side, but I've got 3 thou variation, so I'm going to start printing it again, and sorry, 3/10 variation, which is next to nothing for what it's doing. But I'm just going to scrape it off and go for contact now. I'm quite sure what I messed up on that last one. So that's an hour's worth of scraping up the spout and 15 minutes to correct it. Back to this stage. Got interrupted by a bit of wildlife, which I'll show you in a second. Okay, so I get chickens in the workshop, and I've had a kingfisher in the workshop, and now I've had one of these, which I think is a tree creeper. Anyway, off you go. It's only a little fledgling. Oh, that took considerably longer than it should have done. Anyway, we're flat to all 4 corners, and sort of every 2 inches taking readings across. I've got less than 2/10 variation. Coverage is not bad, but it's where I want it, around that ring. It's a little bit faded there, which is the lowest point. So I am going to call that done and move on to printing the part that goes to it after a cup of tea. This is a bit of a rubbish camera angle, but I've got the bottom half of the compound sat in its seat. I've done nothing other than just deburr it. That's zeroed out on its, that is the near side of it, and I'm running with the compound parallel to the bed. So we've got a rise, 2 thou, 2.5, 3, 3.5. We'll call that 4 thou rise. And I'm going to do the same measurement on the other way. So that's not far off the same starting point. One, 2. Well, that's basically 3 thou. I'm just pressing around so it's not seated flat. You can see that movement. That's me pressing on the front corner. So I basically know that this rear end, yeah, let's bring you back a bit. So that rear end is sitting high. Just check the needle's going the right way if I lift it, yeah. So this back end is somewhere in the region of 3 thou high in the front. That's what I want to get rid of now. So to get that end to drop, I've got to scrape this side of the seating area underneath here. Oi, you scabby mutt. Yeah, just throwing a bit of fluff around for me. Right, onwards and upwards. So we'll flip it over now, sit it on these, and then we'll map out what it looks like. Right, so we've swapped over the indicators, so I'm just a little bit happier using this one. This is a 10th indicator, and we are right on the very point, and we got what, a 10th, so I'm going to call that 0, and we're just going to map it out. Now I know that the 2 outer corners are the lowest points, so if we come in an inch to the centre line, and we got there about 2.5 thou, so we'll go back and get a 2. There. You can see how it's radially scored. Within inner edges, still 2, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. So we're roughly 2.5 on the inner edge, then 2. So 1 will be somewhere around there. It looks to be 2.5 there. Other extreme on the corner. That's pretty much 0. Coming in with 2. Another 3. 3 again. 3 there. So the near side front edge is the one with the most wear. Let's call that 2.5. So we've got sort of between 0 and 3, but the high spots are all towards this centre boss. We'll go down and do the back edge, which is where we're going to be taking material off to drop the rear end down. So we've got call that 3. 2.5. 3. 3.5. You get the picture. Ooh, that's a big one, that's 4. 3. 3 and a bit. Your measurements initially are a bit rough and ready, and you refine them as you're going down. So once we get it within 1 thou, then we can start reading in tenths. At the moment we've got 3 thou come off. Right. So just before we start hacking away, we know the front edge is low, and we know that the bearing face, which is what we're trying to get flat and parallel to this, we know that there's somewhere region of 3 thou rise here, and we know we've got 4 thou higher here than on those front corners. Well, if you take that as a it isn't a flat plane, but if you took that as a flat plane and it being out of kilter here, such that this back edge is 3 thou higher, if you said roughly that's about halfway, that should be somewhere in the region of 1.5 thou higher on the front. But because we've got variable wear on it, we need to just make sure we don't take too much off this, otherwise instead of it coming down and back into plane, we'll end up going below. So it's very much a case of cut it, measure it, cut it, measure it, rather than hack, hack, hack. Oh bugger. So just prior to doing that alignment check, I'd gone over it with the DTI and measured it, and then I mark it according to how many passes it needs to take it down to the lowest level, or the next plane, if you like. I know I've got a low spot here, and that corresponds to the lowest point right on the tip here and on here, and the rest of it you can see are basically all the same markings, which is very much like a splodge, but actually means one. So what I'll do now is clean that off, print it, and then just start working the blues down, because I can go down flat now. I've not got to make any alignment adjustments unless I cock it up and lean too much in one area. So we're just going for bearing now. We've got the alignment when it's sat in on its base. And this is just with a single 360 spin, so you can see we're picking up on this edge, bit through there, and then around the front edge, but we've still got to get down to these corners. I don't want to take too much off, but it's going to need probably about half a thou coming out now. So we're just checking the final alignment. It's a 10th indicator. That's 3. That's 3, and that's still 3. So you're looking at plus or minus 1.5 tenths. Perfectly fine for what it's doing, but when you given that it was about 5 thou out and 3.5 thou out. So I'm happy to say that's good to go. I've got good contact now. So the next bit's when that's on and this is bedded, this is nipped up, I need to consider whether I'm going to change the bearing face at all to allow for the distortion as a result of that. But I need to set it up, clamp it down, and then I'll print it and see how it looks. I've got a bit of a change of scenery this week. I'm visiting my father in the south of Leicestershire, and this is the biggest lump of granite around, so we get quite a good view of it. That's looking west, and on a really clear day you can just about pick out the Welsh mountains in the distance. The city in the distance there is Leicester. In the foreground you've got a village called Hunket. And then we've got what used to be the largest granite quarry in Europe. I don't know whether it is now. And that village there is where I grew up. And all the fields around that area is where I spent most of my weekends. Learning to fish, walk, just generally being outside. It's the village of Croft.